Hey everyone, welcome back to InnoIso. Today we're checking out the Dell XPS 13 Plus. Now, I've always pointed people towards the XPS 13 line where they're hunting for a premium Windows laptop. It's always been a reliable recommendation, but here's the thing. Dell's gone and shaken things up with their latest design. It's not just a refresh, it's a whole new look. But as we all know, good looks and strong performance don't always mean it's the right fit for everyone. Is this the laptop that will breeze through your day-to-day tasks? Can it handle your creative bursts and coding marathons? We're going to find all that out and more. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's get into the nitty-gritty with the Dell XPS 13 Plus. And I'm running an experiment on my channel where I randomly tell people to subscribe to see whether it really works. So, subscribe. When it comes to the design of the Dell XPS 13 Plus, Dell's taken a bold step forward. Breaking away from tradition, they've revamped the XPS 13 with a modern, sleek look that stands out as one of the most attractive laptops on the market today. This design evolution marks a significant departure from the iconic carbon fiber accents that defined the previous models. Instead, Dell's embraced a more refined aesthetic, choosing a sophisticated two-material approach with a glass bottom panel of the keyboard base. It's nice, it's very, very premium, and it's even a little bit elegant. It not only enhances the laptop's visual appeal, but it also contributes to kind of a more cohesive and streamlined design than I'd say your old carbon fiber design. The keyboard itself is a nod to retro styling in general, moving away from the common islanded keys that Apple popularized like over a decade ago to a layout that Dell has executed with quite finesse. I love the visual design of the XPS 13 Plus. In my eyes, it's the prettiest laptop on the market. But of course, a major downside of thin and lights is the lack of ports. This only has two Thunderbolt 4 ports, one on either side of the device. Now, I appreciate these ports being on either side of the device because that enables you to charge and dock the laptop very easily, but I would have very much appreciated a full-size USB-A port or even a micro SD card reader. Let's turn our focus to one of the most striking features of the Dell XPS 13 Plus, its display. This is one of my favorite displays that I've ever seen on a Dell laptop. This model that I reviewed is actually the lowest end, which means it only has a 1920 by 1200 aspect ratio display, which actually ended up being incredibly impressive. There are higher end models with OLED and higher density, but I really didn't think it was necessary. This proves that even at lower resolutions, display can be both stunning and functional for most use cases, which we'll dive into why. But this has a 500 nit peak brightness, which is pretty good for most use cases. One of the key features that really stands out is the inclusion of a touchscreen across all models. This is a welcome change from some previous Dell iterations where touch capability was only sometimes omitted in high-end models. In my mind, touch is table stakes for most Windows laptops, especially one at this price point. Another noteworthy aspect is the anti-glare finish on the display. I usually lean towards matte over glossy displays due to the reduced reflectiveness, but Dell's really skillfully addressed this by equipping the XPS 13 Plus, all three models, with an anti-glare coating that really very effectively minimizes the reflections even in brightly lit environments. I think matte would have been better for that, but the design and cleanliness and the quality probably would have taken a hit with a matte display. That display covers a very, very large portion of the top half of the device. It's got tiny, tiny bezels. And in the top panel, the top bezel, they still managed to fit the Windows Hello IR sensor and the webcam. Kind of crazy, right? I mean, a full-sized webcam along with face unlock in a small bezel makes me wonder why Apple's gone for the notch which doesn't even provide Face ID as a login option. Well, granted, those laptops are going to have better cameras than that on the XPS 13 Plus, but I found it to be decent considering how small the sensor is. The model that I reviewed comes equipped with an Intel Core i7 13th generation processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and 512 gig SSD. The SSD is upgradable, and generally the choice offers a pretty substantial amount of computing power, especially notable considering just how compact it is. In my experience, performance was impressively quick and snappy, handling demanding tasks with quite ease. However, it's worth noting that that display is limited to 60 Hz refresh rate on all models. While this is a standard for many laptops, it might be a limiting factor for those looking for a more smooth visual experience, particularly in gaming or high-intensity like graphic applications. Now, while it comes to managing heat, the XPS 13 Plus provides a mixed performance. During intensive tasks like editing 4K videos in Premiere Pro, the fan does become noticeable. It seems to be quieter to many other thin lights, but the sound is still audible. Interestingly, a significant amount of the heat dissipation seems to occur through the keyboard. You can feel the warmth as the laptop handles more demanding tasks, but heat in general is less distracting than I experienced with other models. The primary dissipation of heat goes through the back of the device in small ventilation, but I've noticed the back of the laptop, the bottom of the laptop gets relatively hot in many use cases, even during Windows updates, which is a pretty common problem for thin and light devices. During my time with the XPS 13 Plus, it adeptly handled my everyday office tasks like coding, Microsoft Office work, and video editing, showcasing its capabilities as a pretty powerful thin and light device. The performance was smooth and consistent, handling multiple applications at a time and processes without like significant hiccups. However, it's important to temper expectations when it comes to gaming. Despite its impressive performance productivity tasks, it's really not meant to be a gaming powerhouse. While it can manage some light gaming, it's not for AAA like Bethesda games, for example. As far as the keyboard and trackpad, this is where the most significant design change has happened versus the regular XPS 13 model, moving away from the traditional islanded keys that we're all familiar with to a non-islanded layout. Visually, it's a striking change that also kind of affects the typing experience. The keys are closely packed without any more major gaps, which felt a bit odd initially, but it was actually surprisingly comfortable after a slight period of adjustment. The keys offer satisfying travel and seemingly larger surface due to the lack of spacing. You'd expect that a thin and light, small 13-inch device like this would have a relatively small keyboard, but since there's no extra space for speakers on the side, for example, there's quite a bit of space here, and so typing feels comfortable. Adapting to the new design, though, took a little bit of time. Those accustomed to standard keyboards might face a little bit of a learning curve, but it becomes quite comfortable with most use. However, the keyboard does have its share of issues. The visibility of key legends on the white keyboard is problematic. This always happens, especially when the backlight's on, the white backlight, which especially because there's uneven backlighting on some keys, like the caps lock key, which doesn't actually shine through consistently. It's just a little bit cheap looking. But the most notable frustration arises with the capacitive touch function row. This is kind of like the touch bar from Apple if it didn't have an actual screen and it wasn't kind of dynamic. Now, it aligns with the design. It goes really well with the design, but practicality kind of falls short. The lack of physical keys for a delete and an escape function feels like a big misstep. I frequently use these keys in many use cases, including the F2 and F5 keys in Excel and a Chrome browser, respectively, and so this felt substantially worse to use anytime I wanted to do any sort of power user work. I think for your average user who doesn't frequent the escape key and the delete key, this will probably be okay. It feels nice to type on, and generally the layout of the keyboard is pretty well thought out. The arrow keys are awkwardly shaped, but pretty adequately spaced and pretty easy to use. And generally I did really enjoy typing on this as long as my workflow didn't require usage of the function row. Now personally, I'm a big fan of the Surface lineup, and I think that's the big competitor for a device like this. It's the alternative for a premium Windows laptop that might be a little bit pricey, but the XPS line feels a little bit more mature and refined than the Surface line of devices. I've often found myself disappointed with more modern Lenovo and HP premium laptops like the Spectre line, for example, and so I think Dell still feels like the default for most thin and light premium machines. But if you're like me, then you might want to opt for the minus model of the XPS 13 in order to hold on dear to that old function row. thank you for watching InnoIso. I hope you liked this quick review of the Dell XPS 13 Plus. If you did, be sure to let me know down in the comments. Get subscribed for more videos like this, or check out the playlist in the description where I review more Windows laptops. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next.